This is problem 15.7 from chapter 15 of Brigham and Houston Fundamentals of Financial Management, Concise 9th edition. And here we're asked to, given a bunch of information, it gives some tasks to do. Calculate the cash conversion cycle, calculate total asset turnover and ROA, and then look at some what-if stuff. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lock that down so I can keep reading as I go through. Write down what I know. Sales are given at $121,000 per year. The cost of goods sold is 80% of sales. So I'll just which is $96,800. The net profit margin is 2% of sales. That's net income over sales. So my net income, that number times that number, 2420. Alright, so I've got a net income. I've got an inventory turnover. And your authors of your textbook use sales over inventory, which I detest as the ratio. You can either take inventory divided into sales or into cost of goods sold. I believe cost of goods sold is a better measure, but there's some people that are use the sales, and there's no good reason for it. So anyway, that's what your authors use, and so that's what we're going to go by. That's $7 of sales for every $1 of inventory, which tells me that the inventory, dollar-wise, there's $7 of sales for every dollar of inventory. Divide the sales by that, and that'll give me the amount, the dollar amount of inventory on average. The day sales outstanding, the DSO, which is 37 days, is accounts receivable divided by 1 day's sales. And this is also days of receivables, which I prefer as a better title than the DSO, but that's just me. You can calculate if there's 37 days outstanding, and if we calculate 1 day's sales by taking 121,000 divided by 365, then I can get accounts receivable as 37 days at 121,000 divided by 365 per day. So there's my accounts receivable. And I got fixed assets at 42,000. And the last step in here, payables deferral period, call it days of payables, is 35 days, which means accounts payable that's, format that, it's not currency, that's actually days. 35 days times 1 day of cost of goods sold, so that's the dollar amount of the payables. Alright, so that's all the stuff that I was told. Now calculate Chastain's cash conversion cycle. Cash conversion cycle, days of inventory, days of receivables, minus days of payables, gives you the cash conversion cycle. All right, so I'm given the days sales outstanding, that's 37, and I'm given the days of payables, that's 35. I'm given an inventory turnover, but since they're using sales per dollar of inventory, that won't give me the days of inventory. I actually have to do the calculation here. All right, dollars of inventory divided by the cost of goods sold per day. And 65 days plus 37 minus the 35. Let's show everything to one decimal place just to make it a little tidier. All right, so the cash conversion cycle is about 67 days. So that's part A. Assume that Chastain holds negligible amounts of cash and marketable security. Calculate its total asset turnover in ROA. Total asset turnover would be sales per dollar of assets, and the ROA would be net income per dollar of assets. All right, so if they held negligible amounts of anything but, to get total assets, that would be the sum of the negligible amount of cash and marketable securities. We'll set that to 0. Inventory, accounts receivable, and the fixed assets, which we were given upstairs. So that's your total assets. Sales per dollar of assets is 121,000. Divided by total assets, or about 1.69. And the ROA would be the net income, which was 2420 divided by total assets. I hate this computer's touchpad, it's just really sensitive. About 3.38%. Okay? So that's for part B. Those would be those answers. Alright, so we got A and B. Going to C. Suppose Chastain's managers believe that the inventory turnover can be raised to 9.9 times. Turn the inventory over faster, which means that we don't have to hold as much inventory. What would be the cash what would the answers to A and B be? Part A and Part B turn out to be if that had been the case. Well, in a spreadsheet, this is pretty easy. I'm just going to take all this mess and copy it over here. That would have been the same, that would have been the same, that would have been the same. That would be 9.9, which would have meant that the inventory would actually be lower. Make sure all my other numbers are actually doing like they're supposed to be doing. The days of inventory would have gone from 65 to 46. Days of receivables stay the same. Days of payable stay the same, but my cash conversion cycle gets lower. That's because I don't have to hold as much inventory. That goes down to 66,488, which gives me a total asset turnover of 1.82 and an increase in my net income per dollar of assets. By the way, that's why we use spreadsheets as opposed to doing this with a pencil. If you're doing what if with a pencil, you're going to be doing it all day long.